Imagine for a second that, that you are standing in a freezing, leaky shed in Paris.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. And it's 1898. The air is thick. It smells metallic and really sharp. And right in front of you is a woman in this heavy, just acid-stained apron.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she is using a massive iron rod, which, it's almost as tall as she is, to physically stir a boiling vat of radioactive dirt.
Just casually stirring radioactive dirt.
Exactly. And she does this for hours. I mean, day after day.
Okay.
For years.
It's just wild to even picture.
It is. But now I want you to wipe that image completely from your mind.
Okay, wipe.
Picture something totally different. A guy in the 1970s, he's wearing these stiff leather boots, and he's walking down a dirt road in Minnesota.
Quite the geographical jump.
Very much so. He's pulling this wooden cart behind him, and he is just putting one foot in front of the other.
So we have two radically different human experiences here.
Completely different. I mean, totally unrelated on the surface. But what if I told you that the invisible line connecting the woman in the radioactive shed to the guy pulling the cart in Minnesota is actually, it's grammar.
Okay. I think most people hear the word grammar and they instantly just flash back to a really boring high school classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like they think of it as this set of arbitrary rules designed just to make them feel stupid if they, put a comma in the wrong place.
Guilty as charged. I mean, that is exactly how I usually think about it.
Yeah.
It's just a test I'm failing.
Right, right. But what we are really talking about today, what our sources for this deep dive get into, is grammar as the actual architecture of human thought.
The architecture. I love that phrasing.
It really is. And the reason we are looking at these two specific, very historical stories is because they are actually used as case studies in this very prominent English learning curriculum that we've been looking at.
Right, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, the story of the man walking in Minnesota, that's used to teach intermediate language learners, so the A2 to B1 level.
And the woman in the pear shed.
That one is used to teach advanced B2 level learners.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because really, our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why.
Exactly.
Why is one historical event perfectly suited for intermediate vocabulary, while the other literally demands advanced, complex syntax?
It's a great question.
Right. Mm-hmm. And even if you, the listener, are a native speaker of English or whatever language you happen to speak, looking at how communication is artificially broken down into these specific levels, it reveals some really incredible insights into how our brains actually work.
It completely gives us an X-ray into human communication. We actually get to see how human beings encode physical, concrete action on one hand versus entirely abstract, invisible concepts on the other.
And I want to throw my own preconceived notions totally out the window here.
Please do.
Because I've always thought about learning a language as, like climbing a mountain.
Sure, the classic metaphor.
Yeah, you start at the base, you look up at this intimidating peak, and you just try to reach the top without stumbling too much. Fluency in my head was always just about avoiding mistakes.
And that is, unfortunately, the most common and frankly the most damaging misconception out there.
Really?
Damaging.
Oh, absolutely. Because there's this immense pressure to be flawless, to have perfect pronunciation, perfect syntax, as if the mountain will just, reject you if you slip on a loose rock.
Right, right.
We treat fluency like a test of mechanical perfection.
But the reality, based on the notes we've been poring over, is that the true measure of fluency has almost nothing to do with avoiding mistakes.
Nothing at all.
It says here that fluency is actually measured by the increasing complexity of the stories you were able to tell.
Precisely. It moved the entire goalpost.
Yeah.
You go from mere accuracy to actual human connection.
That makes so much more sense.
Because language is the vehicle for our experiences. And the more complex the experience is, the more sophisticated the vehicle needs to be. So it's not just memorizing flashcards.
Not at all. When you learn a new grammatical structure, you aren't just getting new words. You are literally expanding your cognitive framework. You are acquiring a whole new way to perceive reality.
Okay, I want to test that theory immediately.
Let's do it.
Let's start with our intermediate, that A2 to B1 case study, the guy on the dirt road.
Dave?
Yes, Dave. We are going back to 1970 to a small town called Waseca, Minnesota, and we are looking at the story of Dave Kunst, who became the very first person verified to walk around the entire world.
Which is just a monumental physical achievement. But, and this is key, it's one grounded in a very recognizable everyday emotion.
Extremely relatable emotion. I mean, Dave wasn't an explorer. He wasn't some rich adventurer with infinite funding.
Right.
He was literally just a guy living in Minnesota, working a normal job, and he was suffering from extreme, just mundane boredom.
The kind we all know.
Yeah, that existential dread where every single day is the exact same loop.
Right, the routine.
You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you watch TV, you go to sleep. Wake up, work, TV, sleep. He felt totally trapped.
Which is, if you think about it, the classic inciting incident of a linear narrative.
Oh, totally.
The protagonist is caught in a loop of habitual action. But then what breaks him out of it?
What was the magazine?
Just a simple magazine.
Yeah, Dave is sitting there one night, probably avoiding whatever boring thing was on TV, and he reads an article about a man who had walked across his own country.
Just one country.
Just one country. And Dave's brain does this massive, sudden scaling effect. He thinks, well, if that guy can walk across the country, why can't I walk around the world?
I love that logic. It's so audacious.
It really is. And it wasn't just a casual passing thought either. It gripped him so intensely that he literally stayed up all night just staring at the ceiling.
He finds a spark of sheer possibility.
Yeah.
But what's crucial for the linguistic framework we're going to discuss is that Dave doesn't just, teleport to the start line.
Right. There's no fast travel in real life.
Exactly. He engages in a very tangible, practical set of logistical steps.
It takes time. He has to save up money. He has to actually research and buy good, sturdy walking shoes.
Because you can't walk the world in loafers.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And he actually sits down with maps to learn about the different countries he's going to cross. Because remember, he's just a regular guy who hasn't traveled much.
Right.
And then he hits his first major realization. Walking the globe completely alone is way too dangerous.
Yeah, a bit sketchy.
So he needs a partner. And he turns to his brother, John, and basically asks him to come along.
And John agrees.
He does. Which brings us to launch. June 10th, 1970.
Let's get into the mechanics of this journey.
Okay, so they step out of their hometown, heading east, and they aren't traveling light either. They've got these heavy backpacks stuffed with food, water, clothes, sleeping bags.
All the concrete, physical items.
Yes. They even have a small wooden cart they pull behind them, eventually getting a mule named Willie McKeat to help.
Willie Make It. That is an incredible name.
Right. It's so good. The local newspapers catch wind of this and dub them the Walking Brothers. It sounds almost romantic at first.
But the physical reality of the road strips that romance away almost immediately, I imagine.
Brutally. I mean, the first few weeks were an absolute nightmare. Their feet were covered in blisters, just hurting with every single step.
No.
They were perpetually exhausted. Their bodies were completely unaccustomed to this level of continuous strain.
Right, because going from TV every night to walking a marathon a day is a shock.
A huge shock. Some days it would downpour, and they would be walking for hours, completely soaked to the bone.
Miserable.
Other days, the sun beat down so hard they felt like they couldn't take another breath. And mentally, they had to deal with the public.
Oh, right. Because people have opinions.
Always. Some people thought they were heroes, offering them food and places to stay. But plenty of others thought they were total frauds or just, desperate for attention.
Okay, so what's fascinating here is how seamlessly this specific type of narrative maps onto the A to B1 language learning level.
Walk me through that. How does the grammar match the blisters?
Look at the nature of Dave's journey. It is fundamentally physical, it is chronological, and it is entirely linear.
Right.
He starts at point A, and he physically moves his body to point B.
Just putting one foot in front of the other, step by step.
Exactly. And because the journey itself happens step by step, the language required to describe it also needs to function step by step.
Oh, I see.
The vocabulary you naturally reach for is focused on tangible, concrete objects. Shoes, carts, rain, sun, blisters, roads.
Yeah, you can point to all those things.
Because you don't need a highly abstract philosophical grammar to describe the mechanics of walking. You need a linguistic framework that excels at handling physical sequence.
So let me ask you this, because I was trying to figure out the chicken or the egg situation here.
Okay.
The curriculum uses this story to teach intermediate English, which is itself a phase of learning that happens step by step.
Yes, very structured.
Is the simple past tense, which is the main grammatical focus here, is it just inherently the language of physical action? Because when I think about phrases like Dave decided, he walked, they started, It feels less like speaking and more like laying bricks.
Laying bricks. I really like that analogy.
Like one solid block placed firmly after another.
The simple past tense is absolutely the definitive backbone of human storytelling. It isn't just about marking time. It is a cognitive act of placing a stake in the ground.
A stake in the ground.
When we recount a sequence of finished actions, we use the simple past to build an unbroken chain. A happened, then B happened, then C happened.
Dave walked. His feet hurt. He bought a mule.
Exactly. It gives the listener a stable, predictable foundation. It mirrors the physics of walking perfectly.
But the curriculum doesn't just stop at the simple past. It introduces friction.
It has to, or the story's too flat.
Right. It specifically pairs the simple past with the past continuous. The example we have in the source is while he was reading a magazine, he saw an article.
Classic pairing.
And I always get tripped up on why we need the continuous form. I mean, why not just say he read a magazine and saw an article?
Because if you say he read a magazine and saw an article, it implies two separate sequential bricks.
Right.
First, he finished reading the magazine, then afterward, he saw the article. But that isn't what happened.
Ah, the article was inside the magazine. He saw it during the process.
Right. The past continuous was reading that establishes duration. It creates a stretch of time. The simple past saw is the interruption.
Okay.
If we think about how the human brain actually perceives time, this grammatical pairing creates a highly cinematic effect.
Okay, walk me through that. How does it work like a camera?
Think of the opening scene of a movie. The camera pans across a room. It's a wide shot. We see Dave sitting in his chair, flipping pages, the TV droning in the background.
I can picture it.
That is the past continuous. It sets the state of flow. We feel the duration of his boredom. Then, bam, the simple past cuts in.
Interruption.
Yes. It's a sudden close-up on his face. His eyes widen. He saw the article. The ongoing background reality is violently interrupted by a discrete, pivotal event.
That makes total sense. If you don't establish the boring, ongoing flow, the interruption doesn't hit with any impact.
Exactly. We naturally developed this grammatical structure because it mirrors how our human attention actually functions.
We exist in a flow state until something grabs us.
Yes. We exist in a state of ongoing flow until a specific stimulus demands our immediate focus.
Okay, so Dave is out on the road, he's walking, he's dealing with the blisters, and the narrative starts shifting to how he feels about the walk.
Moving from physical to emotional.
Yeah, and the curriculum highlights comparatives and superlatives. It notes that the first few weeks were the hardest weeks, and that ultimately the journey made Dave a stronger, happier person.
The hardest, stronger, happier.
Honestly, comparatives always felt like filler words to me. Like, just say it was hard. Why do we need a special grammatical rule to say it was the hardest?
Because human beings are obsessed with scale.
Obsessed with scale.
Oh, absolutely. Once an intermediate learner can sequence events chronologically laying the bricks, the very next cognitive leap their brain wants to make is to measure those events against each other.
Oh, wow. We want to rank things.
We need to rank things to make sense of our emotional reality.
That's deep.
Think about it. The hardest is a superlative. It represents the absolute extreme peak of a quality within a specific data set.
Right. Out of all the weeks, these were the peak bad ones.
Exactly. And stronger and happier are comparatives. They indicate a delta, a measurable change from a previous baseline state.
The baseline being the bored guy on the couch.
Yes. In a physical journey like Dave's, you need these tools to establish the topography of his experience. You need to show the valleys of his suffering and the peaks of his triumph. Otherwise, the listener has no idea if the journey actually changed him at all.
We're measuring the delta of human emotion. I like that a lot. Now, speaking of human emotion and struggle, the breakdown of nodal verbs in this part of the curriculum is really striking.
Modals are fascinating.
Yeah, words like could, couldn't, would, and can.
Yeah.
The text mentions that the night Dave got the idea, he couldn't sleep.
Couldn't.
But later on, the major takeaway he shares with the world is, if you really want to do something, you can do it.
The transition from couldn't to can is literally the entire emotional arc of the story, contained in two tiny auxiliary verbs.
Let me stop you there. Auxiliary verb. We throw that term around, but let's do an ELI 5, explain it like I'm 5. What exactly is an auxiliary verb doing?
Sure. Think of an auxiliary verb as a helper word.
A helper.
Yeah. Words like can, do, have, will. On their own, they don't hold much meaning. You can't just can.
Right, I can with it.
Exactly. But when you attach them to a main verb like sleep or do, they instantly modify the reality of that action.
Okay.
They adjust the tense, or in the case of modal verbs, they adjust the intent, the ability, or the possibility of the action.
So when Dave couldn't sleep, the helper word couldn't is modifying his ability.
Yes, and it's a profound expression of physical limitation. His mind is racing so fast that his body is literally incapable of the action of sleep. The modal verb couldn't establishes a strict boundary.
Right, a wall he can't get over.
But then, look at his conclusion. You can do it.
It breaks the boundary.
Completely. It shifts the entire cognitive space from limitation to permission and possibility. These modal verbs aren't just grammar rules. They are the levers we pull to communicate to others where the edges of our reality currently sit.
That is such a cool way to look at it. And to make sure we aren't just listing a bunch of choppy, disconnected realities, the curriculum heavily emphasizes connectors. Words like but, because, while, and after.
Oh, connectors are vital. If you don't use connectors, language just sounds like a robotic list of data points.
Like Dave walked, Dave was tired, it rained, Dave didn't stop.
It sounds like a telegraph.
Right. Stop. Dave walked. Stop.
Exactly. Connectors are the mortar between those grammatical bricks you mentioned earlier.
The mortar. I like keeping that construction analogy going.
It works perfectly, but introduces friction and contrast. Because introduces causality, the reason why the brick was laid.
While gives us simultaneity.
Yes. These small words are the cognitive glue that allows the human mind to weave disparate, isolated events into a cohesive, flowing narrative fabric.
Which brings us to the final piece of the intermediate puzzle, and arguably the most practical one, the first conditional.
Ah, the first conditional.
The text uses Dave's realization. If you really want to do something, you can do it.
The first conditional is composed of if plus a present tense verb followed by a future tense or a modal verb.
Okay.
And mechanically speaking, it is the absolute perfect structure for giving advice.
Why? I mean, what makes it better than just saying, do what you want?
Because it establishes a concrete cause and effect relationship in the real world.
Like a formula.
Very much like a formula. It says, here is a realistic, tangible condition that currently exists if you really want it. And here is the guaranteed, or at least highly probable outcome you can do it. It doesn't deal in fantasy. It deals in practical, grounded reality, which makes it incredibly useful for an intermediate learner trying to navigate everyday life and give directions or advice.
Grounded and tangible. That perfectly describes the rest of Dave's journey, which we definitely have to talk about. Because applying these grammatical rules to what he and his brother actually endured is wild.
It gets intense.
So they make it through the United States, they reach New York, they take a ship across the Atlantic to Europe.
Laying those bricks across the ocean.
Exactly. They start laying those steps down across England, France, Germany, Italy.
Using their connectors along the way. They meet people who help them and give them food because they are fascinated by the journey.
Yes, exactly. But then the physical reality rears its ugly head again. They hit the mountains in the Middle East.
Rough terrain.
Very rough. The terrain goes from difficult to treacherous. They are dealing with rocky, unstable paths, brutal weather, and steep, exhausting climbs. And this is where the sequence of events breaks.
Oh, no.
John, Dave's brother, gets severe altitude sickness. And we aren't just talking about a mild headache. He is physically decimated by exhaustion and the thin air.
That is terrifying.
They find a doctor, and the verdict is absolute. John has to stop. If he keeps walking, he might die. He has to go back to Minnesota.
That is a devastating rupture in the narrative. The companion, the person sharing the burden, is just removed from the equation.
I can't even imagine the emotional toll that took on Dave. You're halfway across the world, your brother is forced to abandon the mission, and you are staring at a mountain range alone.
But Dave uses his simple past tense.
He does. He decided to continue. He found a new walking partner, a guy named Pete, and they just kept laying bricks.
Through incredibly hostile environments.
Unforgiving. I mean, they walk through India, dealing with torrential monsoons and oppressive heat.
Just relentless.
Then they take a ship to Australia, and they have to cross the outback. We are talking about deserts where water is practically non-existent.
That is so dangerous.
Oh, dealing with wild animals, poisonous snakes, and just staggering isolation. But he just keeps pulling that cart.
Step by step.
And finally, after 4 years, 2 months, crossing through 20 different countries and taking roughly 20 million steps over 14,450 miles, Dave Kunst walks back into Waseca, Minnesota.
The first verified person in human history to walk around the globe.
Incredible.
And the culmination of that incredibly linear narrative is immediate and tangible. He becomes famous, he writes a book, he goes on speaking tours.
He gets the reward.
He achieves exactly what he set out to achieve, and he concludes that it was the best thing he ever did. It made him the stronger, happier person he was looking for.
A triumphant, straightforward conclusion.
It is the ultimate A2B1 story. An ordinary guy in the physical world doing an extraordinary physical thing.
But this is where the curriculum we are analyzing pulls off an absolutely brilliant pivot.
Oh, I love this part.
Right, because we've mastered the walk. We understand the simple past, the comparatives, the real-world conditionals. We can navigate mountains and oceans using our grammar.
We have the tools for physical reality.
But what happens when the journey isn't across physical terrain at all?
What happens when the mountain isn't made of rock, but of complex data?
Yes. What happens when the journey is a descent into the invisible, microscopic, almost magical fabric of the universe itself?
You realize very quickly that your simple past tense and your basic connectors are no longer sufficient.
They just don't cut it.
Not at all. You cannot navigate the unseen world with the tools you use to walk down a dirt road. You need a completely different kind of language.
And this is where we shift into the advanced B2 level. To teach this level of cognitive complexity, the curriculum introduces the story of Marie Curie.
Marie Curie.
A scientist who faced hurdles so massive and so invisible that they literally killed her.
If Dave Kunst's story was about conquering geography, Marie Curie's story is about conquering the unknown boundaries of reality itself.
So well put. Let's set the scene for her narrative, because it doesn't start with a bang. It starts very quietly in late 19th century Paris.
Very different from 1970s Minnesota.
A bit, yeah. Marie is a brilliant but deeply struggling Polish student living in a freezing attic. She barely has enough to eat, often surviving on buttered bread and tea. She literally faints from hunger in class.
The dedication is just astounding.
But she's going to go on to revolutionize our understanding of physics and chemistry and become the first person in history to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific fields.
Dave's catalyst was a magazine article, something external and obvious.
Right. He saw it. He wanted to do it.
But Marie's catalyst is an observation of a microscopic anomaly.
Yeah, she and her husband Pierre are working in this horribly inadequate makeshift laboratory. It was an old dissection shed, actually.
Oh, a dissection shed. That sounds awful.
It gets worse. Marie is examining something called pitchblende. For those who don't know, pitchblende is a type of mineral ore that contains uranium.
Okay.
Now, scientists knew about uranium, but Marie, using an instrument Pierre actually invented, starts meticulously measuring the electrical charge of the air around this pitchblende.
Measuring invisible forces.
And she notices something that every other scientist on Earth had missed, or maybe just ignored.
The anomaly.
Yes. She realizes that the pitchblende is emitting far more radiation than could be explained by the amount of uranium inside it.
It's mathematically impossible.
Exactly. According to the known rules of physics at the time, it shouldn't happen.
Think about the cognitive leap required here.
It's massive.
It really is. It is an invisible discrepancy. It isn't a mountain she can point to and say, let's go there. It is a void in the data, an abstraction.
And from that void, she forms a profound hypothesis. She declares, there must be an unknown element in this ore.
Just pure deduction. And that single theoretical sentence launches one of the most arduous, grueling scientific grinds in human history.
The physical toll is staggering, and I really want to spend a moment on this because it rivals Dave's walk, but in a much more insidious way.
Insidious is the right word.
To prove this invisible element exists, she has to extract it. But it is present in such microscopic quantities that she needs massive amounts of pitchblende.
Literal tons of it.
Yes. Pierre is initially busy with his own work, but he becomes so fascinated by her data that he drops everything to join her. They manage to get tons of waste pitchblende from a mine in Bohemia, dumped right in the courtyard of their leaky shed.
And the extraction process is not delicate laboratory work, like we picture test tubes and white coats.
Oh no, it is heavy industrial labor. It's basically a toxic blacksmithing operation.
Wow.
She is physically lifting heavy sacks of dirt. She's dissolving it in harsh acids. She is spending entire days stirring massive, boiling vats of this sludge with an iron rod almost as big as she is.
As we pictured in the intro.
Right. And the fumes are atrocious. Her hands become permanently cracked and stained with acid and dirt.
And all the while, completely unbeknownst to them, their bodies are being bombarded.
That is the most terrifying part. They didn't understand the danger of radiation.
No one did.
They would work in the dark and marvel at the way the radioactive materials glowed with this faint blue light in the shed. They carried test tubes of radioactive isotopes in their pockets.
It's just chilling to hear that now.
Their health began to actively deteriorate. They were constantly fatigued, suffering from mysterious aches, their fingertips becoming numb and raw.
If we contrast this with Dave's physical hurdles, the blisters, the Raynorie's hurdles are terrifyingly abstract.
Yeah, you can't put a bandage on radiation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Radiation is a silent, invisible assassin. And on top of the physical danger, she is simultaneously fighting an abstract social battle against the scientific establishment.
Right. The sexism she faced was suffocating.
I can only imagine.
When they first presented their findings, many male scientists simply refused to believe that a woman was capable of this level of original analytical thought.
Just blatant dismissal.
Yeah, her own colleagues tried to claim that she merely assisted Pierre. The scientific establishment wanted to view her brilliant mind as just a supportive accessory to her husband's work.
Which is a deeply layered, infuriating social and political reality that simply cannot be communicated with a linear A happened, then B happened structure.
You can't just use simple past for that?
No. You need a language capable of holding multiple conflicting truths at once. The sexism, the invisible science, the physical labor.
And then the ultimate tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
In 1906, Pierre is walking across a street in heavy rain in Paris. He slips and is struck and killed by a horse-drawn carriage.
It's just so sudden and heartbreaking.
Marie is completely devastated. She loses her husband, her partner, her co-conspirator in this invisible world.
But she doesn't stop.
She refuses to stop.
Yeah.
She takes over his teaching post, actually becoming the first female professor at the University of Paris, and she continues the grueling laboratory work alone.
This is exactly why the curriculum shifts to advanced B2 grammar to tell her story.
Because the story demands it.
The mechanics of the language actually have to bend and contort to accommodate this level of tragedy, sophistication, and intellectual rigor.
Let's dive deep into those mechanics then, because I really want to understand how grammar handle genius and grief.
It's a tall order for grammar.
It is. The text points out a structure called inversion. The examples given are phrases like, little did anyone know, and not only had she proven.
Inversion is a powerful tool.
But why do we say it like that? Why not just say, people didn't know much, or she had proven something?
To understand inversion, we have to go back to what we discussed about auxiliary verbs, those helper words like did or had.
The helpers, right.
Normally in English, the subject comes first, then the verb. She had proven, it's stable, it's expected, it's laying a brick.
Okay.
But when you invert them, when you pull that helper verb to the front and flip the normal order, not only had she proven, you are deliberately creating a sense of linguistic shock.
Linguistic shock, like waking the listener up.
Exactly. You are stepping outside the linear timeline of the narrative to comment on the dramatic irony of the situation.
Oh, I see.
When you say little did anyone know, you are holding two opposing realities in your mind simultaneously. The profound ignorance of the people in the past and the monumental revelation that is about to happen in the future.
Right.
It is a grammatical structure that mimics the exact paradigm shift of a scientific breakthrough. It signals to the listener, pay close attention, because the accepted rules of reality are about to break.
That is so cool. It's like the grammar itself is building suspense for the discovery.
It absolutely is.
And the curriculum moves from building suspense to exploring alternative realities with advanced or third conditionals.
Third conditionals. These are tricky for a lot of learners.
The text uses this example. Had you heard of Marie Curie before she became famous, you would have thought. And then it finishes the thought. Now, I read this and thought, why are we being so formal?
It does sound elevated.
Why not just say, if you had heard of her? What does dropping the word if and starting with had actually accomplish in our brains?
It does two things. First, yes, by dropping the if and inverting the subject and verb, had you heard, you elevate the register. It sounds more academic, more reflective, which obviously fits the subject matter.
Right, we're talking about Nobel Prize science.
But the true power of the third conditional is that it deals entirely with the unreal past.
The unreal past, meaning things that never happened.
Exactly. It is exploring a timeline that does not exist.
Mind-bending.
Think about the phrase, if you had heard of her, which I know for a fact you did not, you would have thought X.
Okay, so it's a hypothetical.
It forces the listener to construct a completely hypothetical universe in their working memory, populate it with variables that aren't true, and then deduce the logical outcome of that fake timeline.
Wait, that is literally a description of the scientific method.
Precisely. A scientist looks at the real world and asks, if this unseen variable were present, what would the outcome be?
Oh my God.
The grammar of advanced conditionals is the native language of hypothesis. You cannot do high-level science without the cognitive ability to manipulate unreal timelines.
Which ties perfectly into the next grammatical structure. The curriculum highlights the subjunctive mood.
Ah, the subjunctive.
The example is, were she to succeed? Now, as a native speaker, I use this, but it always feels a little, I don't know, strange in my mouth.
It's a bit clunky sometimes.
Why do we say were she instead of was she? It feels like we were intentionally breaking the rules of agreement.
We are intentionally breaking the rules, and that is the brilliance of it. The subjunctive mood isn't really about tense. It's about mood.
Ew.
It is the grammatical marker of unreality. When you hear were she to succeed, your brain instantly detects that subject-verb mismatch.
Yeah.
She usually goes with was.
Right, she was walking.
Exactly. That tiny moment of cognitive dissonance is a feature, not a bug. It forcefully detaches you from standard physical reality and signals that you are entering a purely conceptual space.
It's like putting on VR goggles. The grammar tells you we are no longer in the physical shed.
Exactly. The subjunctive allows us to conceptualize alternate realities without confusing them with facts.
Because if it was a fact, we'd use was.
Right. It is the exact cognitive tool Marie Curie needed to hypothesize the existence of polonium and radium.
Oh, wow.
She had to imagine and hold in her mind an element that no human being had ever proven to exist. The subjunctive is the language of the undiscovered.
The language of the undiscovered. That actually gives me chills.
It's powerful stuff.
But of course, she didn't just stay in the conceptual space. She had to actually do the physical work to pull those elements into reality.
Stirring the vats.
Yes. And the way the curriculum describes her work uses the past perfect continuous and participle clauses.
Whoa.
We see phrases like, had been processing tons of pitch blend, and working with barely adequate funding, Marie spent 4 years.
Notice how different this feels from Dave's simple past tense.
Completely different.
Dave's actions were discrete. He walked, he saw, he decided. Sequential and clean. Marie's work was the opposite of clean. It was an agonizing, repetitive, simultaneous grind.
It sounds exhausting just reading it.
That's the purpose of the past perfect continuous. She had been processing tons of pitch blend for months before she found a trace.
It just drags the sentence out?
Yes. This structure emphasizes the agonizing weight of ongoing time leading up to another point in the past. It forces the listener to feel the sheer duration of the labor. She wasn't just doing it, she was trapped inside the doing of it.
And the participle clause. Working with barely adequate funding, Marie spent 4 years. I always struggle to explain to people why we use these in clauses at the beginning of sentences.
Participle clauses allow you to stack information.
Stack it.
They communicate simultaneous states of being without making the sentence choppy. She is working with no money, and at the exact same time, she is spending years refining toxic techniques.
So instead of saying she had no money and she spent 4 years, you merge them.
Exactly. It creates a smooth, densely layered narrative that perfectly mirrors the multitasking of a brilliant mind, balancing limited resources with infinite ambition. It's high-density data compression in linguistic form.
Which brings us to the final, and I think the most emotional piece of advanced grammar in the text, mixed conditionals.
Those are heavy.
The curriculum gives this haunting sentence. Had she known then what we know now about radiation's effects, she might have approached her work differently.
It is a deeply poignant structure.
It is, because it bridges time. It takes a condition from the past, had she known then, and it abruptly mixes it with present-day knowledge, what we know now, to guess at a different past outcome. She might have approached her work differently.
You called it grammatical time travel earlier, and that is a very apt description.
Let's look at the mechanism of that time machine then. How does it actually work?
You are taking the if clause from the past perfect, an anchor deeply set in what already happened, and you are attaching it to a present conditional consequence.
So, blending timelines.
Yes. Mixed conditionals allow us to bridge the agonizing gap between past ignorance and present wisdom.
It is the grammar of hindsight.
Yes. They are inherently bittersweet. They express tragedy, deep reflection, and the inescapable truth that human progress almost always requires sacrifice.
We couldn't possibly know the lethal dangers of radiation until someone like Marie Curie bravely, obsessively, and tragically exposed herself to it.
Exactly. The grammatical structure of the mixed conditional is the only tool heavy enough to hold the weight of that historical sacrifice.
And despite that immense sacrifice, the triumphs she achieved are legendary. The text gives us the climax of her story. In 1902, after years of boiling and stirring and breathing in those fumes, she finally succeeds.
The payoff.
From literal tons of dirt, she manages to isolate just 1/10 of a gram of pure radium chloride.
1/10 of a gram.
Just a tiny glowing fraction of a gram. But that speck of matter astounded the global scientific community. She proved the new elements existed. She coined the term radioactivity herself.
Incredible. She won the 1903 Nobel Prize in Physics, sharing it with Pierre and Henri Becquerel.
And then?
Years after Pierre's death, she won a second Nobel Prize in 1911, this time in chemistry, for her work isolating pure radium.
She proved that convention is an illusion, whether it is the scientific convention of what elements make up the universe, or the societal convention of what a woman in the early 1900s was allowed to achieve. She defied all of it.
And she did it by using her intellect to see a reality that others couldn't, and persisting through the agonizing physical and mental labor until she could prove that unseen reality to the rest of the world.
So, after analyzing these two incredibly different journeys, we have to ask, what does this mean for us? For you, the listener, navigating your own path through learning or your career or just life in general.
It's the big question.
Whether you are wrestling with intermediate concepts, just trying to lay the bricks of the simple path so you can tell a story, or you are trying to wrap your head around the conceptual time travel of mixed conditionals to express a complex regret.
Yeah.
How do you measure your own progress?
This raises a really important question about our expectations of ourselves.
Right.
We discussed at the beginning that language learning and really acquiring any complex skill is often compared to climbing a mountain.
The dreaded mountain.
But the core philosophy we can extract from this curriculum and from the lives of Dave and Marie is that learning is almost never a straight, linear, upward climb.
It definitely isn't for me. I hit these plateaus where I feel like I'm actually getting worse at the language.
That is incredibly common. It's called the intermediate plateau.
Oh, has a name. Good.
Yes. Some days you look at a sentence or you listen to a podcast and you understand absolutely everything. You feel like you are standing on the summit, planting your flag.
Best feeling in the world.
But other days, you encounter a new structure or a speaker with a fast accent, and you feel totally lost in the fog. You feel like you've tumbled back down to the base.
It feels like a failure. It feels like you lost progress.
But it isn't a failure. That fog is the natural rhythm of expanding your cognitive boundaries.
Okay.
When you are confused by a new grammar rule, your brain is physically rewiring itself to accommodate a new version of reality.
That's a much better way to frame it.
The real question is, how do we deal with those overwhelming moments when the fog rolls in and we feel stupid?
Well, I think about the two people we've been talking about for the last hour.
Dave and Marie.
Yeah. Marie Curie didn't discover radium overnight. She spent years staring at boiling vats of dirt, failing over and over.
Endless iteration.
And Dave Kunst didn't cross the globe in a single day, and he certainly didn't do it without moments of absolute despair, especially when his brother had to leave.
Right.
Achieving fluency or mastery of any kind, it takes dogged, ungrammarous persistence. It is the daily practice. Every single conversation you stumble through, every book you read, every time you completely mangle a sentence and feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
All of it is building your capacity.
So you're doing the work.
You are either putting a brick down on the road, or you are stirring the pitch blend in the shed. Both are essential.
That is a wonderful grounding way to look at it. And the curriculum notes actually provide some very actionable, practical advice for dealing with that overwhelm.
Let's hear it.
The absolute key is, do not try to learn everything at once. You will cognitively exhaust yourself.
Right. You can't boil the ocean. You have to narrow your focus.
Exactly. Pick one or two specific mechanical points to master at a time. If you recognize that you are currently at an intermediate level, do not stress yourself out about mastering the subjunctive mood or mixed conditionals yet.
Leave the VR goggles in the box for now.
Yes. Focus on your simple past tense. Make sure your chronological storytelling is solid. Focus on using your connectors, but because, well, to make those stories flow better and sound less robotic.
And if you are at that advanced stage and you're feeling stuck in a rut, challenge yourself.
Push the boundaries.
Stop relying on the comfortable bricks. Try writing an email or telling a story using inversion. Try sliding a participle clause into your next meeting to elegantly stack your information.
Play with the tools. Test the boundaries of the vehicle.
Because mastering these tools does so much more than just improve your vocabulary score on a proficiency test.
It literally opens doors in the real world.
Yeah. It opens doors to new professional opportunities, to connecting with people from entirely different cultures, and to forming deep, nuanced friendships that you simply couldn't access without the right grammatical keys.
It gives you a brand new lens through which to view the world.
We've seen today how simple, linear grammatical structures can walk a man step by step across the entire physical globe.
And we've seen how complex, abstract grammatical structures can help a woman unlock the invisible, radiant secrets of the atom.
Language isn't just a subject in school. It is the ultimate tool of human progress.
Which leaves us with a rather profound, somewhat unsettling thought to consider as we wrap up.
Oh, I love unsettled thoughts. Lay it on me.
We've established that the complexity of our grammar directly dictates our ability to express and even comprehend complex realities.
Right. We saw the massive cognitive jump required to move from describing a chronological walk on a dirt road to describing radioactive decay and hypothetical timelines in a laboratory.
The grammar had to evolve to match the science.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
what else is out there?
I see where you're going.
What undiscovered concepts in the universe? What bizarre laws of quantum physics or higher dimensions of reality or even depths of human emotion are currently impossible for humanity to even think about, simply because we haven't yet evolved the grammatical structures necessary to describe them? Are we fundamentally blind to massive parts of the universe, just waiting for our language to catch up?
Wow. Are we just waiting for the grammar to invent the physics?
Maybe we are.
That is absolutely going to keep me up tonight staring at the ceiling, just like Dave Kunst.
Mission accomplished.
Well, thank you for going on this intense linguistic journey with us today. Our advice to you, the listener, keep challenging yourself with material that feels just a little bit too hard. Willingly step into that fog.
Be patient with your progress and forgive your own mistakes.
And keep enjoying the climb. Because remember, we started this whole thing thinking the goal was just to reach the summit of the mountain without slipping. But it turns out the real magic isn't in avoiding the loose rocks. The magic is in standing on the side of that mountain looking out at the incredibly complex view and finally having the precise, beautiful words to tell someone else exactly what you see. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
You know, there is this very specific, deeply uncomfortable physical sensation that I think literally almost everyone has experienced at least once in their life.
Oh, I'm already bracing myself.
Right. Because it usually starts out great. It starts with an invitation. So you get dressed, you check yourself in the mirror, you're feeling good. Exactly. You feel confident, you make your way to the venue, whatever it is, and then you walk through the front door.
Okay, here it comes.
You take one single look around the room, and within just a fraction of a second, your stomach completely drops into your shoes.
Yes, the blood just rushes straight to your ears.
It really does. Because you realize with this total horrifying clarity that you are wearing completely wrong outfit for the occasion.
Oh, absolutely. It's the worst. It's that sudden, just overwhelming desire to turn around, quietly walk back out the door, and pretend you never even existed.
Just blend into the wallpaper.
Yeah, or just sink into the floor. It's a very visceral form of panic.
It really is. I mean, it's the ultimate nightmare scenario.
Yeah?
Just imagine you show up to a high-stakes corporate board meeting, right?
Okay.
Everyone is sitting around this massive mahogany table. They're all in crisp, tailored, dark navy suits. And you are standing there by the door in a loud neon Hawaiian swimsuit and flip-flops.
Just squeaking on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Or, flip it around. You get invited to a casual beach bonfire with some friends on a Saturday night.
Oh, I see where this is going.
People are in shorts, they're barefoot in the sand, they're roasting marshmallows, and you come trudging through the dunes wearing a stiff, immaculate three-piece tuxedo.
Sweating profusely, I imagine.
Right. And the interesting thing here is it doesn't actually matter how nice or expensive your clothes are in that moment, right?
No, not at all.
Like, the tuxedo could be custom made in Italy. It could cost $10,000, but if the context is wrong, you look ridiculous.
Yeah, you feel entirely out of place. And I think, more importantly, people fundamentally treat you differently.
Yes.
Because the clothing itself isn't flawed. I mean, a tuxedo is a wonderful garment.
Right.
And a swimsuit serves a vital purpose if you're swimming. The issue is entirely the mismatch between the attire and the environment.
A mismatch, yeah.
And what's really fascinating to me about this, and this gets to the core of what we're doing today, is how universally we understand this rule when it comes to fabrics.
Sure.
Fashion, physical spaces, we all get that.
Yeah.
But we often completely overlook the exact same dynamic when it comes to the words we use every single day.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We walk into linguistic rooms wearing the verbal equivalent of a swimsuit all the time without even realizing it.
Man, that brings us perfectly to the mission for today's deep dive, because I want to welcome you, our resident learner, back to the table today.
Welcome back.
We know exactly how you operate. We know you love diving into the hidden mechanics of how the world works, how people operate.
You want to know the rules of the game.
Right, and you want that knowledge without drowning in a sea of dense, inaccessible academic jargon.
Which can be a lot.
It can. You want the shortcut to the aha moment. So today, we are decoding the secret social language of the professional and academic world.
This is such a good topic.
It really is. We are looking at this extensive transcript from an advanced English communication course, and it tackles a concept that linguists refer to as register.
Register. Yeah, it sounds super technical, but it's really not.
Yeah.
For our purposes today, it essentially just means the art of shifting between formal and informal English.
Okay.
And doing that depending entirely on the context of the situation, your audience, and the purpose of your message.
So it is quite literally the linguistic equivalent of knowing when to wear the tuxedo.
Exactly. When to wear the tuxedo, when to wear the business casual sweater, and, when to bust out the swimsuit.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through this source material, the thing that immediately caught my attention is that we aren't just talking about basic grammar rules here.
No, definitely not.
We aren't talking about memorizing vocabulary lists or learning how to conjugate verbs in a classroom. The source makes a really bold claim right at the beginning.
It does.
It says that mastering this concept of register is the ultimate dividing line between being a simply good communicator and being a truly great one.
Right. They actually classify this as a C2 level skill.
Which is huge.
It is. Because in the framework of language learning, C2 is the absolute highest tier of mastery. It's basically near native fluency.
Right. And it's because it's not about what you're saying anymore. The core message, the actual data you're transmitting can be exactly the same.
The exact same facts.
Yes. It is entirely about how you say it and how that delivery shapes the recipient's perception of you.
That's exactly why it's a C2 level skill. I mean, a beginner learns how to ask for water.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
But a master learns how to ask for water in a way that makes the person fetching it feel respected rather than, ordered around like a servant.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
If you use informal, highly casual language in a high-stakes job interview, you instantly project a lack of professionalism.
Right. It doesn't matter what your resume says.
Exactly. Regardless of how stellar your resume is or how qualified you might actually be for the role, your linguistic outfit is just wrong.
You're wearing the swimsuit to the boardroom.
You are. And the interviewers will be so distracted by the squeaking flip-flops that they won't even hear your qualifications.
That makes so much sense.
But conversely, think about sitting down at a coffee shop with a close friend who is going through a really tough time.
Right.
If you start using rigid, highly formalized, completely objective language to console them,
you're going to sound like a psychopath.
yes, you sound cold, distant, or maybe even a bit sociopathic. Yeah. You create this artificial barrier between you.
Wow.
So the true mastery of communication, the thing that actually separates the good from the great, lies in that fluidity.
That's the shape-shifting.
Exactly. It's the ability to read the room, understand the invisible social architecture, and adjust the dials of your language accordingly.
I love that, adjusting the dials. And to figure out exactly how to adjust those dials, we aren't just going to speak in, broad abstractions today.
Right. We need to get into the weeds.
We do. We are going to put two highly specific, incredibly relatable scenarios from the source material right under the microscope.
These scenarios are so good.
They really are. First, we're going to examine the delicate, highly political art of asking a university professor for a favor when you are just completely behind on your work.
We've all been there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And second, we are going to look at the process of reporting a complete technological meltdown at your job without sounding like you're having a personal emotional meltdown yourself.
Which is harder than it sounds.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the goal here is to extract the exact vocabulary changes, the grammatical tweaks, and most importantly, the psychological shifts required to navigate these contexts flawlessly.
I think these two scenarios were just wonderfully chosen by the source.
Why is that?
Because they both represent really high-stress situations. And when humans are stressed, our default reaction is often just pure, unfiltered emotion.
Right. We just want to scream.
We want to vent. We want to express our distress so someone will help us. And as we'll see as we break these down, mastering the formal register is largely about managing that.
Managing the emotion.
Yeah, filtering and sometimes completely removing that raw emotion from your communication to achieve a specific strategic outcome.
So, okay, let's jump right into the first scenario. We'll call this the academic ask.
The academic ask. Perfect.
I'll set the scene that the text gives us. So, you're a university student. You are taking History 201.
Classic.
Right. It's the middle of the semester. You are completely overwhelmed. You're behind on your reading. You are stressed out. And you urgently need to email Professor Jones to ask for an extension on a major essay that is due, like, very soon.
Panic is setting in.
Oh, the panic is real. Now, the source actually provides an informal version of this email first to show us what our natural stressed out instinct looks like.
Oh, I know this email so well.
Yeah.
I mean, we have all either sent it or desperately wanted to send it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's think about how you'd normally write that email in a total panic. You open your laptop, you're sweating, and you'd probably type out something very close to what the source provides.
Let's hear it.
Okay, goes like this. Hey, Prophet Jones, what's up? Look, I'm totally swamped with work this week, and I'm way behind on the history paper. Is there any chance I could get a couple extra days to finish it up? It would be a huge help. Thanks, Alex.
Man, it is remarkably authentic, isn't it?
It really is.
It just perfectly captures the exact cadence of a stressed, desperate student.
It really does. I read that, and my immediate reaction was just, I have wanted to send this exact email so many times. It's casual, it's direct.
Very direct.
But I want to pause here and actually play devil's advocate for a second if I can.
Please do.
Looking at this email, isn't there something to be said for just being direct and honest?
Well, sure.
I mean, Alex is struggling, Alex is stressed, and in today's world, we talk a lot about authenticity, all right?
You do, bringing your whole self to work.
Exactly, bringing your whole self to your work or your studies. So why do we need to dress up a simple, honest request with a bunch of extra linguistic formality?
It's a fair question.
Like, why can't we just be human with each other? If Professor Jones is a good person, shouldn't they appreciate the honesty of, I'm totally swamped?
That is a very modern and honestly a very common pushback.
Yeah.
Because we do tend to prize authenticity right now above almost everything else.
Right, we don't want to be fake.
Exactly. But we often confuse authenticity with informality.
Oh, interesting.
What's really crucial to understand here is that the formal alternative we're about to look at isn't actually dressing things up. It's not unnecessary decoration.
It's not just fluff.
No, it's not like putting too many ornaments on a Christmas tree. In professional and academic communication, formality is a highly strategic tool.
Okay.
It serves a very specific structural and psychological purpose.
Okay, what is that purpose? Because totally swamped feels structurally pretty clear to me. I know exactly what Alex means.
It's clear about the emotion, yes, but it completely ignores the relationship.
What do you mean?
Think of the power dynamic. When you send that informal email, I'm swamped, I need a huge help, you are essentially asking the professor to take on your personal emotional burden.
Oh, wow.
Right? You're saying, I am stressed, I'm overwhelmed, please step in and fix this for me out of the goodness of your heart.
Because I'm sad and stressed.
Exactly. You're leading on a personal, informal relationship that, in a strict academic hierarchy, doesn't actually exist.
That is so true.
A university professor is not your camp counselor.
Yeah.
And they aren't your buddy who could just, do you a solid.
Yeah.
They are a gatekeeper of academic standards.
Oh, that completely reframes the dynamic for me.
It changes everything, right?
It does. Because when you use conversational language like, what's up? Or asking for a huge help, you are implicitly acting as if you and the professor are peers.
Yes. You are presuming an intimacy that hasn't been earned.
And that presuming of intimacy, that could actually make the recipient feel really uncomfortable, couldn't it?
Very uncomfortable. Or even disrespected.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The professor has hundreds of students. If they grant extensions based purely on who is the most emotionally stressed, the whole academic system just breaks down.
It becomes a therapy session, not a class.
Right. They have to grant extensions based on valid, structured reasoning.
Right.
So the informal email fails not because it's dishonest, but because it relies on the wrong social currency.
Friendship currency instead of professional currency.
Precisely. You're trying to pay for a tuxedo with arcade tokens.
Man, that makes perfect sense. So let's look at how the source shows us the formal way to rewrite this exact same request.
Yes, let's see the transformation.
The core goal here, which is just getting more time to read the history paper, has not changed one single bit.
The facts are the same.
But the vehicle delivering that goal is entirely rebuilt. Here is the formal version the text provides. Are you ready?
Yeah, me.
Okay. Subject line. Extension request for History 201 essay. Dear Professor Jones, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to respectfully request a brief extension for the essay submission, which is currently due this Friday.
Already, so much better.
Right. Due to an unexpectedly heavy workload from my other courses this week, I'm concerned that I will not be able to devote the necessary time to produce work that meets the standards of your course.
Brilliant.
Would it be possible to be granted a 48-hour extension? This would allow me to submit an essay of a much higher quality. I have attached my current draft to show the progress I have made thus far. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Alexander Miller.
I mean, it's just a completely different universe of communication, isn't it?
It really is. It feels completely different just to read it out loud.
It has weight.
It feels weighty. It feels serious. And the source breaks down exactly why this works so much better into a few key areas, starting with the vocabulary shift.
The vocabulary is the first thing that jumps out.
Yeah, you instantly notice the difference between being totally swamped and facing an unexpectedly heavy workload.
Precisely. Because the informal version relies really heavily on slang, idioms, and what linguists call phrasal verbs.
Phrasal verbs.
Yeah, things like what's up or needing a couple extra days to finish it up.
Finish up. Right.
That language is highly conversational. It's how we speak in real time, face to face, when we are physically sharing space with someone.
Right. Over a beer.
Exactly. But the formal version elevates the vocabulary by moving toward more precise, sophisticated terminology.
Right. Instead of asking for a couple extra days, the student respectfully requests a brief extension.
Yes. Instead of being totally swamped, they face an unexpectedly heavy workload.
The source points out something really specific here that I really want to dig into because I thought it was fascinating.
Oh, about the word origins.
Yes. It mentions that elevating your vocabulary often involves swapping out simple, common words for their more formal, Latin-based equivalents.
It does.
It highlights words like submission, concerned, and consideration. And it's almost as if there's this hidden hierarchy of words in the English language.
There really is.
But why? Why do Latin-sounding words sound like they are wearing the tuxedo while other words don't?
That is honestly one of the most fascinating quirks of the English language. And it actually has a very specific, literal, historical reason.
Really?
Yeah. To understand why consideration sounds fancier than, thinking about it, we have to go all the way back to the year 1066.
Okay, the Norman conquest.
Exactly. When the Normans, who spoke Old French, which is a Latin-based language, when they conquered England, they became the ruling class overnight.
Right.
So the kings, the judges, the aristocrats, and the high-ranking clergy, they all spoke French.
So they were speaking this Latin-based language.
Yes. But the peasants, the farmers, and the common people working the land, they continued to speak Old English, which was a Germanic language.
Okay, I see where this is going.
So for centuries in England, the language of power, of law, academia, and administration was Latin-based, while the language of everyday, messy human life was Germanic.
So the class divide literally became a language divide.
Completely.
Yeah.
And you still see it absolutely everywhere today.
Give me an example.
Think about animals. When an animal's alive, out in the mud, being tended by the peasant farmer, we use the Germanic word cow, pig, sheep.
Oh, wow.
But when that exact same animal is chopped up and served on a silver platter to the king in the banquet hall, we use the French or Latin word beef, pork, mutton.
Wait, really? That's where that comes from?
Yes. Beef comes from boeuf, pork from pork. It's the exact same animal, but the word changes depending on the class of the person interacting with it.
That is wild. I never made that connection.
It's the exact same with our verbs today. The Germanic words are short, punchy, and emotional. We ask, we help, we guess.
Okay.
But the Latin equivalents are multisyllabic, abstract, and intellectual. We inquire, we assist, we estimate.
Oh my gosh.
So when you shift your vocabulary in an email from huge help, which is Germanic, to consideration, which is Latin, you are tapping into a literal 1,000-year-old psychological trigger.
That is incredible.
You are signaling to the professor that you are operating in the high-status realm of academia and intellect, not the everyday realm of casual peasant chit-chat.
You are speaking the language of the court.
Precisely.
That is incredibly illuminating. It makes so much sense why those big words carry that specific weight now.
They have 1,000 years of authority behind them.
Right. But what's interesting to me is that it's not just the big vocabulary words that do all the heavy lifting here?
No, the grammar plays a huge part too.
Yes. The source points out a grammatical shift that is so subtle I completely missed it on the first read. And that is the removal of contractions.
Ah, yes. The great uncombining of words.
Right, because the informal email says, I'm totally swamped.
I''.
Exactly. But the formal email says, I am writing. And I love thinking about this because I sort of view contractions like cutting corners on a racetrack.
How so?
Well, if you are just out for a casual Sunday drive with your friends, sure, cut the corners. Take the fastest route, blend your words together.
Keep it breezy.
Right. Say I'm and can't and won't. It's fast, it's efficient. But in formal writing, you want to stay exactly in the center of your lane.
You don't cut corners in a tuxedo.
No, you want to spell everything out. I am do not, cannot. Because it proves to the reader that you are not rushing. You are taking your time.
I really like that analogy. Because spelling out those contractions physically slows the pace of the reading down.
It does.
It takes a fraction of a second longer for the brain to process I am versus I'm. And that tiny micro slowness translates to seriousness.
It adds gravity.
Exactly. It removes the breathy, rushed, panicked quality of informal speech. When you use contractions, it sounds like you were talking quicker.
Out of breath.
Right. When you spell them out, it sounds like you are pronouncing your words carefully at a podium. It tells the professor, I respected you enough to take my time drafting this.
But the grammatical shifts go even deeper than just taking your time with contractions. Let's talk about the specific grammatical choice that the source highlights as the absolute cornerstone of politeness in English.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
And this is funny because it's the exact thing every high school English teacher tells you to avoid at all costs.
The dreaded passive voice.
The passive voice. We are constantly taught to use active voice. Make your writing punchy. Make it dynamic. Use strong verbs.
Right. Active voice is the golden rule of creative writing.
But look at the critical sentence in this formal email. Would it be possible to be granted a 48-hour extension? That is as passive as it gets.
It is incredibly passive. And we need to really explore why the passive voice, despite being hated by creative writing teachers, is the secret weapon of corporate and academic diplomacy.
Why is it?
Well, notice what is entirely missing from that sentence. Would it be possible to be granted?
Oh, the word you.
Exactly. The professor is completely removed from the action.
It's not, can you grant me an extension? It's just this abstract concept.
Yes. It's like the extension is a magical object just floating out there in the universe, waiting to descend from the clouds.
Right.
That absence of the word you is entirely deliberate. The source explains that this passive construction is vital because it creates a polite psychological distance.
How does distance make it polite?
Let's think about how requests work in human interaction. When you ask someone for something, you are essentially imposing on their freedom.
You're giving them a task.
Right. You are asking them to do work for you. Linguists actually call this a face-threatening act.
A face-threatening act because you are threatening their autonomy.
Exactly. When you say, can you give me an extension? It is a direct demand on the professor's agency.
You're pointing right at them.
You put a spotlight directly on them. It forces a yes or no answer from them personally. And that can feel confrontational, even if you don't mean it to be.
Nobody likes being cornered.
Right. But by shifting to the passive voice, would it be possible to be granted you completely remove the direct pressure on the individual?
Wow.
You aren't asking the professor to do a chore. You are asking the universe if a hypothetical situation might exist.
That is brilliant. It frames the request as an objective possibility rather than a personal demand.
It gives the professor space to breathe. They don't feel attack.
It's linguistic diffusion.
Yeah.
You are literally diffusing the tension of the request before they even read it.
Exactly.
And that ties beautifully into the final point the source makes about this whole academic scenario, which is the overall psychological reframing of the entire situation.
This is where the magic really happens.
The context of the request completely flips between the two emails. In the informal one, Alex is essentially saying, I am stressed. Please do me a personal favor so I can feel better.
It's all about Alex.
But look at how the formal email frames the exact same problem. I am concerned that I will not be able to devote the necessary time to produce work that meets the standards of your course.
It's a masterful pivot.
And then this would allow me to submit an essay of a much higher quality.
That reframe is the true genius of the formal register.
Alex has completely removed their own personal stress, their own panic emotional state from the equation.
Nobody cares that Alex is stressed.
Right. It's no longer about Alex needing a break because they are tired. It is suddenly, brilliantly, about Alex's deep, profound commitment to the professor's high academic standards.
Yes.
It's framing the extension not as a favor to a lazy student, but as a necessary operational step to ensure the integrity of the university's coursework.
It flatters the professor's ego, honestly.
It really does.
And notice the addition of the attachment at the very end. I've attached my current draft to show the progress I have made.
Oh, that's proof of life right there.
It's brilliant. It preemptively counters the professor's worst assumption.
Which is that they haven't done anything.
Exactly. It says, I'm not asking for time because I was at a party all weekend and haven't started. I'm asking for time because I have started, I am working hard, and I want to make this perfect.
You're highlighting the core function of the formal register here.
What's that?
It takes a subjective, messy, emotional experience like, I'm panicked about my deadline, and translates it into an objective professional transaction.
Exactly. Additional time is required to ensure quality control.
It demonstrates an acute understanding of the power dynamic. The student respects the professor's time by using a clear, searchable subject line.
Right.
They respect the professor's intellect by using precise, Latin-based vocabulary.
The court language.
Yes. They respect the professor's authority by using passive, non-demanding grammar. And they align themselves with the professor's goals by focusing on the quality of the work rather than their own feelings.
It really is a masterclass in diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
You are managing upward.
Now, asking a professor for a favor is one thing, right? Because the power dynamic there is inherently baked in and universally understood.
Sure, everyone knows the professor is in charge.
Right, so bowing to that authority makes sense. But what happens when you aren't asking for a favor?
Okay.
What happens when you aren't asking for an extension, but you are just trying to report a cold, hard, factual problem at work? And what if that problem is making you absolutely pull your hair out miserable?
Oh, this is a very different beast.
It is. And that brings us to the second scenario in our deep dive, which we'll call the tech meltdown.
This is a scenario that I guarantee literally every single person listening has experienced.
Oh, without a doubt. Yep. So here is the setup the source gives us for this one.
Okay.
You are at work. Your company has recently rolled out a brand new software platform, and it is absolute garbage.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
It keeps crashing, it's freezing up your computer, and you have just lost a solid hour of hard, painstaking work.
Just
gone. You need to communicate this issue to your manager so it can be fixed.
The emotional temperature in this scenario is incredibly high. You are frustrated, you are suddenly behind schedule through no fault of your own, and you just feel helpless.
Exactly. The adrenaline is pumping, you are angry. So the source, once again, gives us the informal version first.
Let's hear the vent.
This is the venting version. This is the message you would Slack to your work best friend in the break room while you're waiting for your computer to reboot.
Right. The unfiltered version.
Think about what you'd type. It would probably look exactly like this. Man, I'm at my wit's end with this new system. It's a total piece of junk. It keeps crashing on me. And I lost like an hour of work this morning. Someone really needs to fix this mess. It's driving me crazy.
It is raw, it is visceral, and it is entirely focused on the speaker's internal emotional state.
It really is. It's all about me and my feelings. And again, playing devil's advocate here.
Always.
I look at that and think, well, it communicates the facts, right?
It does.
The system is crashing. An hour of work was lost. It needs fixing. It's exactly how anyone would naturally speak when they are upset. It's very human.
True.
So why is this a bad message to send to a boss? What's wrong with being a human who is frustrated by broken tech?
It is human, yes. But in a professional setting, especially when communicating upward to management, raw human emotion is often a huge distraction from the actual solution.
A distraction.
Yes. Let's put ourselves in the manager's shoes for a moment.
Okay.
A manager might be receiving 50, 60, maybe 100 emails a day.
At least.
Right. They're managing multiple crises simultaneously. If you send that message, I'm at my wit's end, it's driving me crazy, you are forcing the manager to do emotional labor before they can even address the technical issue.
Emotional labor. What do you mean by that?
Yes, emotional labor. They have to read that and their brain goes, oh no, Alex is upset. I need to calm Alex down. I need to validate Alex's feelings before I can even ask IT about the server.
Oh, you've given them an extra job.
Exactly. You have made yourself the primary problem that needs to be managed rather than the software. You've centered your feelings over the operational failure.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
You're adding cognitive load to their day by making them deal with your stress instead of just the broken software.
Exactly. You become a liability in that moment, not a team player.
Wow. So how does the formal register fix this? Let's look at the formal report provided in the text.
Let's see the professional version.
Here's how you are supposedly meant to communicate that exact same tech meltdown to your manager to get the fastest, most effective result. Ready?
Ready.
I would like to bring a critical issue to your attention regarding the new software platform. The system is experiencing recurring stability problems, including frequent, unprompted shutdowns. This morning, a system failure resulted in a significant loss of productivity, as approximately 1 hour of work was irretrievably lost. I believe this issue requires immediate investigation to mitigate further impact on our team's performance.
Wow. The contrast is just stunning.
Yeah, it really is. It's the exact same set of facts. The software broke and I lost work, but the emotional heat has been completely turned off.
It's like throwing a bucket of ice water on a fire.
Yes. Let's dissect the vocabulary changes here because the source points out some really specific choices that achieve this cooling effect.
Right. The informal version uses these highly idiomatic, deeply emotional phrases. At my wit's end. Piece of junk. Driving me crazy.
Right.
The formal version completely scrubs all of that away and replaces it with objective clinical terms. Critical issue. Recurring stability problems. Unprompted shutdowns.
The source specifically highlights one particular word in that formal text that I think acts as the linchpin for the whole paragraph.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
The word irretrievably. The formal text says that 1 hour of work was irretrievably lost.
Yes.
Instead of just saying, I lost an hour of work for good, why does the source focus on irretrievably? What makes that such a powerful choice?
Because it is a definitive, factual, architectural assessment rather than an emotional complaint.
Okay, unpack that.
If you say, I lost an hour of work and I'm so mad, the focus is on your anger. The manager might just think, well, maybe you can just redo it quickly once you calm down.
Right, they dismiss it as an emotional overreaction.
Exactly. But if you say the data is irretrievably lost, you sound like an auditor. You sound like a forensic investigator.
It sounds so final.
It is final. You are presenting a cold, hard, irreversible consequence. It elevates the vocabulary in a way that forces the manager to take the structural problems seriously, rather than just viewing you as a disgruntled employee having a bad morning.
But there is something else happening in this text, isn't there? Because it's not just big words.
No, it's grammar again.
Right. The source introduces a specific grammatical technique here, and from what I gather, it seems to be the absolute secret sauce of formal corporate and academic writing.
Oh, absolutely.
They call it nominalization.
Yes, nominalization. This is a concept that once you see the mechanics of it, I promise you will start noticing it in every single professional document, legal contract, or academic paper you ever read.
Okay, let me try to puzzle this out based on what the source is saying. Nominalization. It sounds like nominal, which sounds like noun.
Right on the money.
So looking at these changes between the informal and formal text,
Yeah.
it seems like we're stripping away the action verbs and the descriptive adjectives and turning them into static things.
Yes.
Like taking the action out of a sentence.
You hit the nail on the head. That is exactly what it is. In the simplest terms, nominalization is the process of turning a verb, an action word, or an adjective, a descriptive word into a noun.
Into a thing.
Into a thing or a concept. You are taking a fluid action or messy feeling and freezing it into a static object.
Let me see if I can spot the examples from the text. So in the informal version, you might use an adjective and say, the system is unstable.
Right.
Unstable is an adjective. It's describing how the system is behaving right now in real time. But through nominalization, the formal version changes that adjective into a noun phrase.
How does it phrase it?
It says the system is experiencing stability problems. So unstable becomes stability problems.
Perfect example. Unstable is a temporary state. Stability problems is an object you can put on a list. Let's look at a verb.
Okay.
In the informal text, you might think, we need to mitigate the impact, where mitigate is a verb, an action that a specific human being has to physically do.
Right, I have to mitigate it.
But the formal version shifts it slightly to focus on the noun concept, to mitigate further impacts. It becomes abstract.
I really want to try to visualize this because it feels like a magic trick when you read it.
It kind of is.
It's like, okay, imagine you are holding a video camera and you are filming a really messy, chaotic, active movie scene.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Let's say it's a car crash. There are people running around, there are flames, there's shouting, there's a ton of emotion and verbs happening all over the screen.
Lots of action.
That is your informal, active language. The system is crashing, it's driving me crazy. That's the messy video.
Right.
But nominalization is like hitting the pause button on that camera. You take that chaotic, moving video and you snap a clean, high-resolution, black and white photograph of it. Oh, I love that.
You freeze the action. You completely remove the personal frustration, the sweat, the noise, and you turn the situation into a static, factual object.
A photograph.
Yes. You can take that photograph and slide it calmly across a mahogany boardroom table.
That is a phenomenal analogy. You are turning a messy human experience into an operational object. Because nouns are things you can point at. Verbs are things people do.
Right.
When you use verbs and adjectives, I'm at my wit's end because it keeps crashing.
Yeah.
You are a human in distress. But when you use nominalization reporting, recurring stability problems resulting in significant loss of productivity, you are a professional diagnosing a systemic failure.
The manager doesn't have to navigate your emotions anymore.
No, they just have to look at the photograph you slid across the table and address the stability problems.
Let's invent another example to make sure we've really got this locked in.
Sure.
Say I took a certification test for work and I failed it.
Okay, high stakes. The informal, active way to say it would be, I failed the test. It's full of personal shame. It's an action I physically did. How do I nominalize my own failure?
You turn the verb failed into a noun.
Yeah.
You could say, there was a failure to achieve the required score. Or, the test resulted in a failing grade.
There was a failure to achieve the required score. Wow.
Notice what happened.
It completely removes me from the sentence. The I is gone.
Exactly.
It sounds like the failure just occurred spontaneously in a vacuum, like weather.
Yes. It distances the speaker from the action, which creates this incredible aura of objectivity.
It really does.
It takes the personal I completely out of the equation. You're not complaining. You are reporting data. It is incredibly empowering when you realize you can just change the grammatical shape of your words to change how seriously people take your problems.
You don't have to shout louder to be heard. You just have to nominalize your problem. Okay, so we've seen how to use register to manage upward power dynamics with a professor. We've seen how to use nominalization to manage emotional volatility and report problems objectively.
We have some good tools now.
We do, but I think the listener is probably wondering right now, how do I know when to use which tool?
Right. How do you apply this?
Exactly. How do you actually take these C2 level skills out of the textbook and apply them to the real, messy, unpredictable everyday life? Because you don't want to use them all the time.
No, definitely not.
So that brings us to the final part of our deep dive, the strategic rules of application.
The source material boils all of this down to a very clear mandate. They say that context is king.
Context is king.
Before you open your mouth, before your fingers even touch the keyboard to draft an email, a Slack message, or a text, you have to pause.
You have to run a diagnostic.
Exactly. You run a quick diagnostic check by asking yourself 3 vital questions.
The first question the source lists is, who is my audience?
Right. And this seems obvious, but it's the absolute foundation of register.
Who am I talking to?
Yes. Are you speaking to your best friend, your grandmother, a peer in your department, your direct manager, the CEO of your company, an angry customer?
Because each one demands a different level.
The audience completely dictates the baseline level of respect and distance required.
The second question modifies the first. It asks, what is my relationship to them?
This is where it gets nuanced, and a lot of people trip up here.
How so?
Well, you might be speaking to a manager, which implies a formal baseline, right?
Sure, boss equals formal.
But is it a manager you've worked with for 10 years who you play golf with on the weekends and who knows your kids' names?
Oh, true.
Or is it a brand new manager who was hired yesterday from a rival company? The closer and more established the relationship, the more you can safely slide toward an informal register.
Even if they outrank you.
Exactly. But the newer or more distant the relationship, the more you absolutely must rely on formal structures to show respect.
Okay, and the third question. What is the purpose of this communication?
This one is all about the stakes.
The stakes.
Yes. Are you just checking in to ask if they want to grab coffee? Low stakes.
Right.
Or are you asking for a massive, unprecedented favor, like a 2-week deadline extension? Or are you delivering terrible news, like a server crashing and deleting client data?
Very high stakes.
The higher the stakes and the more you need from the other person, the more formal you should lean to ensure absolute clarity and professionalism.
Okay, let's actually put these 3 questions to the test with some rapid-fire hypothetical scenarios.
Oh, I love that idea.
Let's see how register shifts in real time based on these variables.
Let's do it.
Okay, scenario A. Let's say you notice a minor bug on the company website. It's Friday night at 11 p.m. You are using an asynchronous tool like Slack or Teams, and you decide to message the CEO directly.
Wow, okay.
Who is the audience? What's the relationship? What's the purpose? And what is the register?
Okay, let's break it down. Audience, the CEO, extremely high hierarchy, relationship. Assuming you are a mid-level employee, the relationship is very distant.
You probably don't talk much.
Right. Purpose, reporting a minor bug. So the stakes are relatively low, but the power gap is huge. And crucially, you mentioned it's 11 p.m. on a Friday.
Yes.
The register here must be impeccably formal, but highly concise. You do not use slang. You do not say, "Hey boss, found a glitch."
Never.
You use passive voice and nominalization. You would say something like, "Apologies for the late message. A minor technical irregularity was observed on the homepage. I wanted to ensure this was documented for review on Monday."
That is smooth.
You create distance to respect their weekend, and you use formal language to bridge the massive power gap.
Excellent. Okay, scenario B.
Hit me.
You are emailing a peer. You've worked side by side with them in the trenches for 3 years.
Okay, close friend.
Very close. You use slang all the time. But yesterday, they were unexpectedly promoted, and they are now officially your direct manager.
Oh, this is a classic trap.
And today, you need to ask them for a day off next week.
This is where people get in trouble. The relationship history is highly informal, but the current relationship has fundamentally shifted.
Overnight.
Yes. They now have power over your employment.
Yeah.
And the purpose asking for time off is a request. The register here absolutely needs to shift.
So I can't just be like, "Yo, need Tuesday off."
No. Now, you don't have to suddenly sound like a 19th century butler and say, "Dear sir."
That would be weird.
Very weird.
Yeah.
But you must drop the extreme informality. You can't say, "Hey man, I'm taking next Tuesday off." Cool. You need to acknowledge their new authority.
How do you do that without sounding fake?
You might say, "Hi Sarah, I'd like to formally request PTO for next Tuesday. Let me know if that works with the team's coverage."
Formally request.
Yes. You use a slightly more elevated register to signal that you respect their new boundaries. It shows you aren't going to take advantage of your friendship.
That is so smart. Okay, one more. Scenario C.
Go ahead.
You are messaging a longtime vendor. You have a great friendly relationship with them.
Okay.
But today, they completely messed up a massive order, and it's costing your company a lot of money. You have to email them to fix it.
Okay, so the relationship is friendly, but the purpose is high-stakes conflict resolution.
Very high stakes.
This is where nominalization is your absolute best friend.
Why?
Because if you use your normal, friendly, emotional register, you might say, "Guys, you really messed this up. I'm so stressed out. Please fix it."
Which invites them to get defensive.
Exactly. It invites defensiveness and emotion. Instead, you deploy the formal register to cool the heat.
Like ice water again.
Exactly. You say, "There appears to be a significant discrepancy in today's delivery. We need to implement an immediate resolution to prevent downstream delays."
There appears to be a discrepancy.
Yes. You attack the problem, the discrepancy, not the people.
This perfectly highlights what the source calls the golden rule of formality. And this is something I think everyone just needs to write on a Post-it note and stick directly to their monitor.
It's the best advice in the text.
The text explicitly states, "When in doubt, err on the side of formality."
It is the safest, most reliable advice you can get in any type of professional communication.
Now, I do want to push back on this golden rule just a little bit.
Of course you do.
Well, because if you walk into every single new interaction, a new job, a new class, a new networking event, and you are exclusively using nominalization, passive voice, and thousand-year-old Latin-based vocabulary,
I see what you're saying.
don't you run the risk of sounding like a complete robot? Don't you risk alienating people by being perceived as cold, stiff, and totally unapproachable?
It's a very valid concern. Because people want to work with humans, not algorithms.
Right. You don't want to be the guy wearing the tuxedo to the beach bonfire.
No, you don't. But the source provides a really brilliant defense of this golden rule. And it comes down to the mechanics of what we might call social recovery.
Social recovery.
Yes. Think of it this way. It is incredibly easy, almost effortless, to become more casual if the other person signals that it's appropriate.
Oh, Right. Like if you send a highly formal, carefully crafted email to a new client
Yes.
and they reply with, "Hey, sounds good," with the smiley face emoji.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You instantly know you can drop the tuxedo and put on the business casual sweater for the next reply.
You just match their energy.
You match their energy. They have explicitly given you permission to lower the register. You haven't lost anything by starting formal. You just showed respect, and they comfortably invited you to be more casual.
That's a great point.
However, consider the reverse. It is almost impossible to recover from being too informal in a professional setting.
Oh yeah, it's a one-way street.
Completely. Imagine you start a conversation with a new company vice president by saying, "What's up, man? This new project is a total piece of junk."
Oh no.
And they just look at you with cold, silent disapproval.
You would want to die.
You cannot undo that. You have offended them, you have signaled a profound lack of professional judgment, and you can't suddenly switch to nominalization to save yourself.
You can't just be like, the project is experiencing stability problems.
No, the damage is already done.
I think of it like toothpaste.
Toothpaste.
Yeah, you can always squeeze a little more casualness out of the tube if you need it, but you can never, ever put the casual toothpaste back into the tube once it's made a mess all over the counter.
That is exactly it.
Once you've been inappropriately informal, the professional boundary is permanently broken. So starting formal isn't about being robotic. It's a protective shield.
A protective shield. I love that.
It protects your reputation and your face until you know exactly what the specific rules of engagement are for that unique relationship.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It is always, always better to be perceived initially as slightly too polite and respectful than to be perceived as drastically unprofessional and presumptuous.
You can always loosen a tie.
But it's much harder to put one on after you've already spilled coffee all over your shirt.
That is perfectly said. Well, this has been an incredibly enlightening breakdown. We have moved from the broad conceptual idea of putting on the right linguistic outfit,
Down into the weeds.
right, down into the deep historical roots of why certain words carry more weight, going back to 1066.
Which is still blowing my mind.
Into the microscopic grammar of passive voice and nominalization, and back out to the universal rules of navigating human relationships and power dynamics.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with some actionable steps.
The source material actually issues a very specific, highly practical challenge to its students, and we're going to pass that challenge directly on to you, the listener.
Yes, the listener challenge.
Sometime today, I want you to open up your phone
Go into your text messages or your email outbox.
and find a highly informal message that you recently sent to a close friend, a sibling, or a partner. Find something full of slang, contractions, and raw emotion.
Something where you were venting about a bad day or maybe asking for a massive favor.
And I want you to actively practice rewriting it for a formal audience.
Pretend you are sending the exact same core information to a university professor, a judge, or the CEO of your company.
Actively force yourself to change the word choice. Hunt down those Germanic phrasal verbs and upgrade them to precise, Latin-based vocabulary.
Strip out every single contraction.
Put the sentence into the passive voice to remove the direct demands.
And, most importantly, try to attempt a little nominalization. Take a messy active verb or an emotional adjective and freeze it into a solid, professional, objective noun.
Take that photograph. It is a remarkable exercise. You will be surprised at how much mental energy it takes to shift that register intentionally the first few times.
Because we're not used to doing it on purpose.
No, we just react. But with practice, it becomes a muscle memory. It becomes an instinct that will serve you and protect you in every professional room you ever walk into.
And as you are doing that exercise and staring at the two different versions of your own message on your screen, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own time.
Something for the ride home.
A concept that builds on everything we've talked about today, but takes it one step further inward.
We have spent this entire deep dive talking about how changing your words changes how others perceive you.
Right, how the boss sees you.
How a professor evaluates your dedication, how a manager assesses your professionalism, how a CEO judges your competence.
Outward perception.
Exactly. But consider this. Does speaking or writing in a highly formal objective register actually change how you perceive the problem yourself?
Oh, that is a fascinating question.
Think about that tech meltdown scenario. If you force yourself to stop venting, to stop typing, "I'm driving myself crazy,"
Right.
and instead force your brain to formulate a sentence using nominalization and passive voice, describing the situation merely as recurring stability problems.
Does that linguistic shift actually calm your own mind down?
Exactly. By surgically removing the emotional words from your vocabulary, do you inadvertently remove the emotion from your own thoughts?
Are you not just putting on a tuxedo for the room, but actually changing the shape of your own internal reality?
Does the outfit change the person wearing it?
Wow. If you speak objectively, do you become objective? That is really something to chew on.
It is.
Well, thank you so much for bringing such an insightful source to the table today. We love taking these deep analytical shortcuts to knowledge with you. Keep analyzing the rooms you walk into, keep mastering those invisible rules of communication, remember your nominalizations, and we will see you next time for another deep dive.